All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear us, you can see us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join our webinar. We're just going to wait a couple minutes for the other attendees to flow in. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Sid or Alyssa if you want to pull up the PowerPoint and share your screen. And while we're waiting for that to come up, you should be seeing some polls popping up on your screen. We're curious, just while we're waiting, to see if you're into sweet or salty snacks. That has been a debate here at Novisto. It seems to be a question that we should ask during our interview process, but there seems to be a hard line right now between sweet or salty snacks. So feel free to use the poll to cast your vote. Alyssa, Sid, are you sweet or salty?
Salty, always salty.
Oh,
Oh.
100%.
I'm
Absolutely
a pickle
salty.
girl.
Oh my gosh, same. Have you tried Grillos yet?
No, I was just in Philly and I wanted Grillos, but you can't bring them on the plane unless you want to check a bag, and then that could be a mess. So,
That could be a mess, yeah.
yeah.
Kate, can we pull up the one on data collection? How early do you prepare for data collection? I'm quite curious to see. Oh, yeah, you see, split down the middle again. The sweet and salty debate continues. Split down the middle. Can we launch the other one on how do you prepare for data collection? I don't know if, yeah, there we go. Okay, so this poll is particularly interesting because it actually feeds into the topic that we're going to cover on today's webinar. So we're quite curious, before we get into the meat of the conversation, how early do you and your sustainability teams actually prepare for data collection? We notice the season, everyone's quite busy with data collection right now. Are you a last minute person who waits, till the last month or two before submissions are required? Do you like to get ahead in advance? Can you even get ahead? Can you even start data collection in advance? That's a question I'm hoping we'll answer today as well. All right, we almost have quorum. All right, let's see what some of those results look like. I love the last option. People prepare in advance. Exactly. To the 15% of people who voted for people preparing in advance, I'm right there with you. It's a tough lesson that I learned working in the ESG space that advanced preparation is quite useful. I don't know if Sid and Alyssa will agree with some of the stories that they're going to share in today's webinar, but I used to think you could do it at the last minute until I realized you can't. And then we have we have 41%, okay, preparing either a month or two or more than 3 months. All right, seems to be standard with what we've been seeing with our clients as well. All right, so let's jump into it. Hello again, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so very much for registering for our webinar, for taking the time to join. We're here to talk a little bit about what sustainability teams and what top sustainability teams do differently when it comes to collecting their ESG data. It's a brand new calendar year, which means we have renewed hope for ESG and data collection processes this year, but that also comes with a lot of stress. And we know teams are already feeling the pressure of meeting all the different reporting deadlines. So we wanted to take the opportunity to share with you some real use cases, some real success stories, and some failures as well in terms of what we've seen with organizations around the world who are collecting ESG data for any number of disclosures and reporting requirements. So joining me on the call are two individuals who are much more seasoned than I am in this area. So we have Alyssa and Sid. Alyssa is an ESG solutions engineer, used to be an ESG analyst here at Novisto, and Sid is a senior customer success manager. And both of them bring a wealth of experience in client facing roles where they've actually sat with clients in the weeds of their data collection processes and help them move from a person like me, who was that last minute waiting to collect a week or two before, to more successful strategies for collecting data. So the objective for this webinar, before I pass to Sid and Alyssa, as a reminder, is to really give you tangible and usable tips on how you can actually advance your data collection processes and where you might expect some pitfalls and things you can look for throughout the reporting year. We do have a live Q&A at the end as well, so please feel free to use. You should have a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use that to drop any questions, and we will take those questions at the end of the call. The session will be recorded as well, and it will be circulated. So anything you don't miss, you can always catch up later on. But for now, I'm going to pass to Sid and Alyssa.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rajiv. I know Alyssa and I are very excited to get things started. Before I quickly pass it to Alyssa to talk about our first strategy, I just wanted to quickly go over Novisto by the numbers. So I know we have some longstanding customers on this call, some customers who are new to Novisto, and some prospects, and also some members of the Novisto team here. So quickly, I just wanted to talk about data collection in Novisto by the numbers. As you guys know, Novisto has been around for many years now. We help with standard ESG data collection, with the questionnaire season, primarily S&P and CDP. So I just wanted to show you some kind of cool numbers to get things started, just to show you how much data we've really collected. And like Rajiv said, we've seen some awesome stuff. And we've also seen some things that we could probably learn some lessons from. I feel like that's the proper way to say it. But let's quickly talk about this. So over the last few years, Novisto has collected over 500,000 number of data points. That's across a wide range of industries, including insurance, mining, banking, airlines, a whole breadth of things, consumer electronics. So we've kind of seen a little bit of everything. In that process as well, we've been able to connect with almost 10,000 SMEs. Just over 9,000 individuals who have come into the platform, submitted data. They've either been contributors, reviewers, or approvers. My customers, you already know what those mean. If you're a prospect, I'm sure you're going to learn very soon. And also, we support over 30 different frameworks. As you guys know, the world of ESG is constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. I expect to see that number grow before we even have our next webinar. So, and there's a quick overview here. We've got a little map below. The Novisto team is located all over the world. We've got people in North America, Europe, and down over in Asia as well. So we are really boots on the ground. We see what's happening. We know what's going on. So really excited to chat more about this. But for now, Alyssa, I'm going to pass it over to you to really kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. So just before diving into our, key recommendations, like Rajiv mentioned, the goal of today is to really show and share what we've learned working with companies for the last 5 years on their ESG reporting. We've noticed the most common pain points that have been endured during data collection and getting reports ready. And we've uncovered some strategies that can really help to address these pain points and ultimately allow you to have a smoother data collection and reporting process. So what are these common pain points that we often see? These are probably no shock for you, but data collection is starting and concluding too late. So that's kicking off closer to fiscal year and then probably should, forcing rushed work and then missing those opportunities for efficiency. There's also, we've heard, lower data quality coming in, and a lot of that, going hand in hand with that is low SME engagement. SMEs aren't understanding what's being asked of them. The ESG is being deprioritized, and the data getting submitted is inconsistent. Workflows are heavily manual and inefficient, and every cycle we're building again from scratch. And there's this admin burden that's, again, this lack of efficiency, making our job harder than it needs to be. And then in the later stages, that rework, that audit risk, those gaps that are getting discovered really late in the game. These are those major pain points that we've been noticing as we work with customers. And so today in our presentation, what we really want to go over with you are four, key strategies that we've noticed that work really well for our customers to help ensure that, again, things go as smoothly as possible and you can manage those pain points or eliminate them altogether. So firstly, proactive preparation, planning in advance, aligning expectations early, that's where we'll start. Leveraging what you've done in the past, with your past data collection and using that SME feedback to really improve your process. Reusing again, prior year request mapping. So again, let's use what we've already built. And then finally, thoughtful export preparation. I think this is something that gets overlooked a lot is let's think about what our final product's going to be as we create that process. So it's actually being considered. So those are the main things that we're going to go into today. Again, as Rajiv said, if you have questions throughout, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can definitely make this as interactive as possible.
Alyssa, I'm curious on the common pain points before you move on. Do you see any differences between geographies or industries for any of those pain points, or do you think the four of them are fairly common across all sustainability programs?
I would say that I don't think they discriminate between industry or geography, actually, interestingly. I think these are super common amongst all of them. At least that's what I've seen. I don't know, Sydney, if you've noticed any different.
I think the one thing that I definitely see stand out more, and particularly I see this in like the medical space, the mining space, and any of my electronic customers. So I specifically more so work with like semiconductor production. Um, is really the low data quality and SME friction. And that comes from working with these large organizations that are all across the world. You've got people in different time zones, people with different expectations, people in different roles. So if we've got anyone on here and you work for an organization, you've got SMEs all over the world, I think that'll be a really big one for you.
So the magnitude
Yes,
of the pain point might change, but the pain points
Absolutely.
are definitely agnostic.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
yeah. Yeah, and just I think piggybacking off what Sid said, the complexity of an organization, the number of SMEs that you're needing to engage with, I think, yeah, for obvious reasons that can over complicate things as well.
Sounds good.
Okay, so diving into our first strategy, proactive preparation. So something I've come to learn from working in this space for over 4 years now is that ESG teams do not struggle because of the effort required by their roles. They struggle because often the planning starts too late. Sid uses this analogy a lot when we talk about this problem, which I quite like, which is you don't build a plane while you're flying it. And it lends itself to that idea that you don't start planning data collection when you should really be starting data collection. It's best to start at least at a minimum a quarter before your fiscal year end. From that poll, I was really happy to see a lot of the responses that came in. Um, a lot of people are starting about 3 months before, which is really, really great to see. So maybe there are just some additional tips we can help you with to really help make that planning process more efficient. And as you all know, teams such as yourselves, are going to be hard pressed to find a team like yours where the responsibilities start and end with data collection and generating a final report. You're needing to balance all of these other things in the mix. You've got customer and investor questionnaires. You've got board presentations, potentially ratings agencies knocking at your door. A lot of effort and things to balance for you. And so to be able to deliver on all of those things can be very time and resource intensive. And so what can you do? Well, at a foundational, getting us back to the basics level, if I were to sit down with a company again and for the first time help them navigate their first data collection, there are a couple of things I would tell them. Firstly, it would be in order to balance all of these priorities, create a quick timeline of those deliverables when they're due, so you can prioritize and allocate resources effectively. Any of our customers would also be familiar with this concept, but for the newer faces on the call today, mapping the overlap between what the ESG standards and frameworks are asking you to disclose is going to be key in terms of efficiency. So, as you know, a lot of these data points, it's going to be hard to find a data point that's specifically only asked by one standard. So having that mapping done allows you to really be efficient in your data collection, and really live by this collect once, report many philosophy that we have here at Navisto, where your efforts are really going to bear the most fruit possible. Um, Not only does this ensure that you don't have to duplicate effort, it also allows you to centralize and manage your data in one place. And having your data centralized in one place allows you to safeguard it against these inaccuracies that could potentially happen. For example, collecting a data point more than once, getting two different answers, again, not of highest data integrity. That's not the kind of quality that you're going to want to put into your final reporting. And then in terms of proactively preparing, one tip I would really, really want to underscore here, because I think it really saves teams in the long run, is socializing expectations early. So the timing and cadence of the different data requests that are going to be going out, the level of effort that can be required or time spent that can be required. Um, One that's really important is why this data matters. I know that in your team, it might be obvious why we're doing what we're doing, but amongst the teams that you might need to get this data from, it can be helpful to give refreshers or put it in terms that are helpful for them to understand the value of this work, to really get their engagement up. So, for example, it could be, something in a more quantitative fashion, like referencing your latest CDP score. Here's where the company's at in terms of CDP. Here's where our board wants us to be. This is the impact it has on our business. And this is how the efforts that you put towards helping us with this is going to help us in the long run. So really contextualizing in that way to get that engagement up. And then finally, clear instructions. So in Navisto, we do have, guidance from the standard setter, so you can always see what exactly is required from the standard setter, including methodology. You can also add your own internal guidance or notes for contributors to look at to make sure they have all the important considerations in place when they add data. Um, but outside of Navisto as well, like if you are using a system now and there's that ability to add those clear instructions, that's going to be super helpful. Another really important thing to consider is what is the escalation matrix like? So if I'm a data contributor, who do I go to if I have questions? If it's a technical question, I suppose I go to my manager, but having that clear instruction, if it's process related, in terms of data collection, letting them know they can go to the ESG program leader. Who is that person? How do I contact them? Um, Having these clear instructions will allow you to reduce the back and forth questions and allow you to have higher data quality and consistency, especially when data gets collected across more complex organizations and business units. So, in a nutshell, just to get us started off, proactive preparation will allow you to balance all of these ESG priorities, build efficiencies by mapping overlap, and then communicate more effectively with your SMEs to bring their engagement up, but also allow you to get higher quality data as your end result. And in practice, I noticed that this was with a customer that you worked with, so I'll let you speak to this particular example.
100%. As someone who touches many rounds of data collection, I see a lot of different customers here. This is basically an example of one of our long-standing national insurance partners here in Canada. So basically, their fiscal ends, it aligns with calendar, so it ends in December. I was on site with them back in October. We mapped SMEs, we identified gaps, we made sure that requests were built, we had already booked training. Truly, from October to December, we were ready to go. So when people were on break for the holidays, whether that's Christmas or American Thanksgiving, whatever that looks like, by the time January hit, we got back that first week and we were ready to send requests out. We already have our first batch of data in. Our next one will come at the end of this week and then 2 weeks from now. So truly, they will be ready to have all of their data in by about mid-February, allowing them to really publish. Honestly, their goal for publish is end of March. So I know a lot of people end up publishing closer to May and June. That tends to be the customers I see who publish a little bit later. We're not mapping requests, we're not, planning those things out typically until December or early January, which kind of, causes that delay. And I know for a lot of people, there is a lot of push from stakeholders to publish earlier and earlier every year. So this is a great one here. And honestly, truly, the best piece was they realized that there was also some gaps in their internal systems. They realized they didn't necessarily had the support that they needed from their ESG team. A couple of people had been shifted around, roles were changed. I know that happens to a lot of teams. And what we ended up actually doing is partnering with them with our Novisto data collection support package. So we actually have a team member here who is basically managing the majority of their data collection, built requests, they're following up with SMEs, they're troubleshooting, hosting office hours. So just that additional layer of support. But because we kicked things off so early, we were able to identify those gaps, fill them, rather than them scrambling come January, February, realizing that they had no one to own this process.
Sid, and just for the
Mhm.
attendees to understand, can you give us an
Yeah.
idea of the scale? Like, is there an average number of data points or how many taxonomies this organization might have been disclosing? Do you have an idea?
They have about three different taxonomies frameworks and taxonomies that they report against. They also do a lot of custom data points, particularly in the insurance industry. I find that there's a lot of custom KPIs that get built out. So not only are they leveraging, the Novisto data points that kind of come out of the box and that are pre-mapped, like Alyssa mentioned. So, collect once, report many. But also they have a broad range of custom risk data points, KPIs that they have built that are very specific to their organization. So I think we have about 45 data requests out, and those include minimum 10 to 20 data points.
Right. So fairly mid to high complexity from a program perspective. And I
Exactly.
know this particular customer, this is not their first rodeo, and still there were lessons to be learned. They still took advanced preparation as
Yes.
a proactive preparation, as the slide says, as a key strategy, and it seems to have worked in many cases. I know we're still within that data collection period, but it seems to be working. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is their fourth time doing data collection with us, and they've won many awards for their ESG report. So, you always have to iterate. You're always looking to improve there. So, keeping an eye on the time, though, I am going to jump into our next point, and this definitely relates to the proactive preparation point, but really leveraging past data collection feedback. I think this one is so important. Personally, I see it time and time again, and it really makes a huge difference. So, I think a really big thing with this when we're talking about leveraging past feedback is listening to your SMEs. If there is ever trouble with data collection, it typically lies with SMEs. They don't necessarily understand why we're doing this. January is a busy time for everyone. Really making sure that we are listening to the feedback, the suggestions, what they've provided before to really optimize the systems and processes you are using to make the lift as light as possible for them. And that's one of my favorite things about Novisto is that's what we do by leveraging the request flow. But really the big thing here is it's not just about making it easier for them. I think Alyssa touched on this earlier. The easier and simpler it is for SMEs, the better the data we have, right? They're not going to be rushing to input things. They're going to take the time to properly source, any of the source documentation that's needed, the information that's required, making sure they're actually giving you the right attachments. So it's really making sure that we take feedback and then we iterate on that, right? And we have a customer in the mining industry. They're a leader in sustainable Canadian gold extraction here in Canada. And that's basically what we're in the process of doing right now. They did their first round of data collection with us last year. And essentially, the entire time we were collecting SME feedback, what data points made sense, what didn't. Did it make sense for them to enter this manually, or could we use our Novisto bulk upload feature for that and just upload 100 plus data points in one swoop? So, really taking that feedback from the first year and then making sure that what we were giving them this year was a lot more SME friendly. Really love this kind of like middle point where it's this whole like, what's in it for me, right? Alyssa made a really good point earlier. Talk about CDP scores. I think it's really important to acknowledge, and I do this on SME training all the time. This is not something that is related to most of your SMEs' compensation, right? It doesn't really impact their bonuses. There's not really an incentive for them to do it. So, really making sure that we're able to show them, hey, the data you provide does have an impact, whether it's on share value, end of year bonuses, if that's like a broader thing within the organization, not necessarily individual, scoring, what opportunities does that open? Does the company get certain certifications? I think there's a few different angles that you can take on that, but really making sure that your SMEs understand like this isn't just another thing on their to-do list. Like this actually does drive value and it is important to the organization as a whole. Um, and then the last piece here is really making sure, like when we're talking about that feedback, obviously a lot of the things I've alluded to have been workflows, systems, updating metrics and data collection, and how do we get things from SMEs. But I was literally on a call this morning with a customer, and they said one of the big pieces of feedback they got last year was that the SMEs didn't feel supported. They had questions, they didn't know who to go to. There wasn't like an opportunity for them to voice those questions. And, sometimes you don't want to send an email. Like sometimes it has to be a phone call, it has to be a conversation. One of my favorite things I personally love to do is having office hours. I do this with a lot of my customers. We have drop-in office hours where SMEs come in and they can ask me whatever it is about the Novisto data collection process. What this allows to happen is basically any system-related questions, workflow-related questions, they come to me and my ESG champions, they get to focus on the questions that are going to get them the best quality of data. That's it, right? Like that's incredible support. A lot of my teams take advantage of that and they definitely need it. And then the last piece here is also implementing those feedback loops. I mentioned this with our customer in the mining industry. They have a running document where they collect questions, they collect feedback, and then when they're done collecting at the end of February, they'll write their report, they'll publish in May, and then in June, we sit down and we look at all the feedback and we implement it before CDP, before S&P gets answered. So to make sure as we're getting into that next round of collection, we've implemented the feedback that's needed. So I think a lot of people kind of build processes maybe away from SMEs. I know everyone has an opinion. That's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But if you're hearing the same feedback time and time again, it might mean that there's time for change. So that's the big piece there. Rajiv, before I jump into the next one, any questions about this? Any thoughts?
Oh, I think we're good.
Love it. Okay. I'll keep this one short and sweet when it comes to mapping last year's data collection, and then I'll pass it back to Alyssa for our final point here. But really, if you've used Novisto, you know that this is like one of the best features. If you haven't yet, oh, you're in for such a surprise. So one of my favorite things here is using last year's data requests to make sure we're optimized for this year, right? I'm a big fan of work smarter, not harder. You guys already have enough spreadsheets, you have enough emails, you have enough meetings that you need to coordinate. Let's leverage the information we have from last year when we are building requests and mapping out SMEs from this year. I know you have all the spreadsheets where you've got this comes from this department, this comes from this person. Oh, I need 2 eyes on this. You've got all that information. The fabulous thing about using Novisto in particular is all of that lives in the system. It's tracked year over year. And basically, with the click of one button, we can pretty much export that information for you to map. Now, the first year when you're using a new platform, it's always a learning curve. It's always a learning curve. Guys, my iPhone updated the other day. I've got liquid glass now. I'm losing my mind. Okay. This always happens. So the first year when you get Novisto, I understand you're going to have to build some of these requests out from scratch. You've got spreadsheets from previous years that you're going to leverage. But year 2, let me tell you, I've got a customer of mine. They're a Fortune 500 pioneer in electronic design. They're incredible. They're doing their second round of data collection with us this year. Last year, they onboarded the system. They did data collection starting in May. Okay, their fiscal ends in ends in December. They started doing data collection in May. That was a standard timeline for them. It is January 28th. We will be sending out requests on Friday. So that is 4 months earlier, because what we've been able to do is we looked at all the requests that we sent out last year. We looked at the data points. Okay, any changing in their frameworks, what they're reporting on? Nope. Cool. We don't have to change that. Then we looked at their SMEs. Okay, who's contributing, who's reviewing, who's approving? Okay, this person's on mat leave, that person left, this person changed roles. Within a matter of minutes, we were essentially able to update all of their requests from last year to accommodate for the changes in team members, and we will basically be ready to send out requests literally on Friday, which is crazy, right? And again, they're also getting pushback where, hey, we want to disclose and publish earlier and earlier. Now my champions get to go to their leadership and say, hey, we adopted this new platform. We will now be publishing 3 to 4 months earlier. So that is such an easy win if that's some pressure that you're getting from your side as well. So really making sure that, yeah, guys, we're working smarter, not harder at the end of the day. So if you are a Novisto customer, make sure you ask your CSM about this, because truly it's an incredible workflow. It saves people a ton of time. Before I hand it back to Alyssa for the final one, Rajiv, any questions about this one?
Yeah, I'm actually curious. So we spoke a little bit about industry, geography.
Mhm.
You all have referenced some pretty big clients, big orgs.
Absolutely.
But obviously, big orgs are not the only type of orgs out there struggling with ESG data collection. From the strategies that you've described so far, do they also apply to mid-sized organizations or smaller orgs that aren't the Fortune 500 multinationals?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's a big thing to acknowledge, right? Like some of the companies we're talking about, the ESG teams we deal with have almost 20 people, right? And then there's some ESG teams I work with that are one, maybe two. And honestly, this truly is a lifesaver for a lot of them. I do think, when you have, these massive companies, I was chatting to a customer this morning, they have one person that does all of their scope three. They have one person that does their scope one and scope two, right? Like they have these breakdowns in SMEs, and a lot of companies don't have that. So being able to have a system that builds this mapping for you, you're able to leverage that proactive piece, right? Because if you're doing a lot of this stuff on your own, and you don't necessarily have the support of a whole team, absolutely. And truly, I think the biggest thing, and Alyssa nodded to this earlier, with Novisto in particular, is having the overlap and the mapping of multiple frameworks ready to go, because that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that's manual work. I'm going to be honest, you can do your best to leverage ChatGPT or Gemini to do that mapping for you. I think we've all seen some pretty funny AI hallucinations. It's getting better, but at the end of the day, that QA and that work still has to be done by hand. So I do think, regardless of the size of the team, all of these strategies are applicable, but just the scope obviously is going to look different at the end of the day.
Yeah, that works. That sounds fairly reasonable.
Right? There you go. Okay, awesome. Alyssa, I will pass it back to you as we jump into our last point.
Yeah, so this last one I think is super important, but I do think it gets overlooked a lot, and it's thoughtful export preparation. So, as opposed to running into a situation where you have worked tirelessly to collect all of this data, and you're now sitting with yourself asking, how am I going to extract it from the system I've collected it from? How am I going to get it into this format that I need it in? Asking yourself while you're still preparing for data collection, what do I want my end result to be? And then focus your data collection efforts and that preparation effort towards building that. That's really going to save you a lot of time at the end of the day and lead to, a more audit ready final product. So, to put it into more of a practical example, I know a lot of companies need to compile their data in a way that they can then share it with copywriters to add narratives or to their designers to add those final design elements. And those different people are going to be using different tools, for example, and would like to have it in a particular format. And so it's important to consider how this data that you've spent all this time getting together is now going to feed into these outputs. So as our customers know, in Navisto, you have the ability to compile select sets of data and put them together in custom templates. And then you can export them into various outputs. So if I need Excel, because that's going to work well with my design team to put together my GRI index, or if I need a Word document, because that's going to be most compatible with Adobe InDesign. And I know that's what my designers are going to be using. That allows you to do that sort of preparation. That's really going to save you time at the end of the day. We also have Word add-ins, Excel add-ins, and this I call out because the ability to be able to embed values into that document will not only give you that head start because you can then sync those final numbers to that document, but it also allows for that traceability because you've already done that work. When it comes time for auditing, you can now always trace back to the source. Where did that data come from? Same idea with the export, a little bit more specific with the add-in, but same idea. I can always trace back to where did my data come from in my central source of truth. And, the benefits of thinking ahead in this way when it comes to export preparation are you can identify gaps sooner than later. So this is where I need my final product to be. And here's something that I'm missing that's going to help get me there. So I can, call that out from the get-go, get the resources I need, or get the process in place that I need. Essentially, when export requirements are defined early, those gaps and inconsistencies can surface prior to or during data collection, as opposed to when you're already in a rush to get to the finish line. You've got your data, I've got my end date, and I need to get there, and now I've got this hiccup to deal with. You'll also have less work once your data is finalized, because you can simply, again, pull that export of the template you created, or simply sync your Word document to reflect that final those final data points that you've collected, because you've already done that work of structuring your outputs. And then finally, not only are you speeding up your ability to deliver on that final report, but you'll also be more audit ready. Because again, you can just trace back very simply. I've set everything up for myself. I can trace back very easily to where I got that data from. And it's not a scramble when auditors come knocking on your door asking for certain requirements to be fulfilled. So in that sense, this export preparation piece, I think, is often overlooked, but it can really save you a lot of time and really set you up for success.
Alyssa, if I'm looking at this slide
Yeah.
as an attendee, I'm going to say this is not rocket science. We should be
Mhm.
building towards the end result that we want, right? From your experience, why have people not been doing that? Like it seems obvious. Determine what you want your end result to be and build towards that. Why have organizations not been doing that, or what have they been struggling with? Why is the end result literally coming at the end of thought?
Yeah, I think there are probably a couple of reasons. One thing that I've heard is the sync between teams doing those different actions to have the final output. So having that final report, I think there needs to be a common language or you have to be in lockstep with your design team, with the copyright team, with whoever you're going to be producing that final output with. Again, like if I know my team is going to use InDesign and Word is the best format to give them this data in, that's going to help me understand what format to get into. But I think that there is these silos that get built internally that make it difficult to know what exactly is going to work. And I think just also it's this gargantuan task of data collection. And I can totally understand it's a lot of our teams, especially I know Sid nodded to the fact that we have big teams that we work with, but we also have very small teams that we work with. And just the idea of getting data collection executed and getting those numbers is already taking up a lot of the mental space of these teams. So I think it's just worth the reminder that it might seem like a lot of work. And that first time that you do this, it might be a lot of work, but like Sydney's emphasized when it comes to requests, this is also a process that the first time you do it, that first big lift can really pay off dividends in the future and really carry over.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have some questions as well.
Any slides left to go through?
We've got one quick one, but this one
Yeah.
is more for the attendees than it is for us. And as Alyssa's talking about export preparation and how reports change and your data needs are going to change. I would definitely recommend if you're like thinking about this and you're like, I want to do some of this stuff, maybe I'm struggling with it. Novisto has an ESG maturity assessment quiz. This is one of my favorite tools that the team has built out. I know a bunch of you have your phones in front of you. You might even be on your phone right now. Take a second, scan the QR code. We're going to answer some questions here, but I definitely recommend running through this quiz. Also, check out the Novisto website. We've got some incredible assets to help you with data collection, preparation, double materiality assessments, because I know that's a whole beast in itself. But definitely take a second, scan this here as Rajiv starts to head into our Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Sid. So we have a few questions. I have one of my own as well. When you were doing the Vista by numbers, you flashed up some pretty big numbers. I think one of them was 30 plus taxonomies and frameworks covered. So we know it's not just the regulatory stuff that we do here at Novisto, it's also voluntary reporting. We also are involved with some of the rating and ranking agency questionnaires as well. And we've got a specific question about EcoVadis and how do our services sit alongside the likes of EcoVadis certification. I'll be the first to tell you, whoever asked that question, and to tell the audience, we do not certify or we do not provide EcoVadis certificates per se. That is still for EcoVadis to do, but let's Sid, I believe you've worked with customers who've used us to help complete the EcoVadis questionnaire, correct?
Absolutely. This is my bread and butter. We're starting to prepare quite a few of our customers for EcoVadis this year as well. What I love about leveraging EcoVadis in Novisto in particular is that you get to use that request flow. So like I mentioned earlier, looking at requests from last year versus this year, I'm doing the exact same thing with one of my customers. They are a semiconductor distributor. They're a massive organization across the globe. And essentially what we're doing is we're looking at who answered what questions in EcoVadis last year. We are are anticipating a couple of changes in questions this year, but we're using that as our baseline so that once their questionnaire window opens, they are ready to hit the ground running, and they are basically ready to go. They know exactly what SMEs are going to be participating in what capacity. Last year, they also had a score improvement. So this is just a super quick quote I have from them, but using Novisto was extremely helpful in ensuring that all internal SMEs were aligned with the submissions. We've improved 3 out of the 4 themes asked by EcoVadis, and they went up 19 points because of the platform workflows. So they shared that with us last May. Big celebration there. We're aiming to get another improvement for them this year. So we do service EcoVadis, and I know that's a big one. I see a lot more of my customers also doing this year as well.
That's amazing. And EcoVadis, for those of you who've never participated in an assessment, EcoVadis places a lot of weight and emphasis on evidence and documentation and proving what you're responding to. Sid, can you touch a little bit about the evidence side of things and the document management? What sort of successes that the client would have seen?
Yeah, it was huge. So basically, in Novisto, we essentially have the ability to attach documents. You can build out a document library, and that's one of my favorite things is having the document library as a member of our ESG team. If you know that there's a lot of documentation your team is going to be pulling and referencing, what you can do is you can actually upload that into the Novisto document library to make sure that your team is always referencing the most up-to-date version of those documents. So you don't have someone referencing V2, V3, V6. No, it's always the most up-to-date version. And in the questionnaires with EcoVadis, there's always the ability to attach attachments, any supporting documentation, and we also have that available for standard data collection as well, really just making all of those audit workflows that Alyssa was talking about earlier just so much smoother and so much quicker.
Yeah, simplification, right? We want people to move faster, but to not lose accuracy and precision in moving faster. Absolutely. Alyssa, I want to come to you. Sid did not use the keyword. I actually didn't hear the keyword come out once on this call, but she gave 2 examples with ChatGPT and Gemini, and I did not hear the term AI come out, so I'm going to bring it up. With the prospects you've been chatting with, has AI come up? Have they asked about using AI as a tool to help accelerate some of the reporting workflows? What have you been hearing in the market?
Yeah, it seems that AI is the topic of conversation. Everyone wants to see how tech companies like ourselves are going to be leveraging AI. It would be silly not to, of course, not to take advantage. I think one question I get often, which is exciting because it's definitely something on our roadmap, but using AI to generate narrative content is something I've been hearing a lot because, again, we mentioned part of the workflow is sending to copywriters, people that don't necessarily know your business the way you do or know the data in the way that you do, but they're just adding, that narrative to really massage it in and make it report ready. And so a lot of people are interested in seeing how AI can help with that burden. And so that's actually a functionality Navisto is working on to help with that AI generated, content using the data that you've collected, informed by the data that you've collected, that then you can obviously review before it gets included. But we've also got AI leverage throughout the platform. We're using it to develop further our peer benchmarking, where we have an AI chatbot right now in Navisto that can help you answer questions about your data, about processes in Navisto. So yeah, AI is definitely a big topic of conversation, and we are part of that conversation for sure.
And someone might say we're biased, obviously, but we've been testing our AI chatbot and other features against the other tools in the market, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., and we're seeing even more accurate results than they're providing. So very promising. If you do fill out the ESG maturity assessment quiz, I would be more than happy to walk you through all the AI things we're doing here at Novisto. So the last one I have, and I see we're approaching time, this question, I read it through as it came in, and I had 2 minds around whether it was a technology solution for a platform to actually fix, or if this is more of like an operating procedure or a training solution. So the question is, top management is typically the one taking their time to validate and review reports. And in many cases, when the SMEs and the ESG team has prepared everything on time, it gets stuck at the senior management level, and then the report is not published on time. to both of you, either of you, what have you seen when it comes to moving the report through the different stages, especially when it gets to senior management and they have so many other things on their plate, but you still have a report to publish on time?
Yeah, I so one way I think technology could help with this, which I do also acknowledge what you said, Rajiv, about like internal processes and understanding the importance of having things move faster. That could just be something internal to work on. But the way that I think technology can assist specifically with Navisto, and this is the conversation I've had with customers in the past, which is having the Navisto system hold them accountable instead of you having to speak to a senior and hold them accountable. That's a very awkward situation to be in. So for example, if you sent a data request out to, someone senior to you and they're taking a while to get it back to you, setting a due date, having automated reminders come from Navisto, let the Navisto system chase them for you. And they'll see it's coming from Navisto, as opposed to you having to knock on their door multiple times and beg for them to finish something. I think kind of reduces that friction and that nervousness that comes with approaching a senior leader.
Mhm. I love that. I see that work well. Another piece that I see a lot of my ESG champions do is while they're doing the proactive preparation months in advance, they will book a placeholder in senior leadership calendar and they will say, hey, this is a meeting and we're going to sit down and we're going to go through the report and the feedback together. Again, doing these things in person in the office, if you guys are remote, doing it over Zoom to really make sure that there is dedicated time in people's calendars for this. I also see this working for individual SMEs. I have another member of the mining community who essentially has booked time with each of her managers who essentially are managing some of the SMEs who are doing data collection. And essentially, she has dedicated time in all of their calendars to make sure that questions get answered, data is coming in properly. So, also, again, with that proactive preparation, pretty much inserting yourselves in their calendar to make sure that stuff is getting done on time.
Mhm. And expectations being clear, what's expected of them by when. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point said.
That's such a full circle point to wrap up the webinar on, especially since it brought that proactive preparation point back to the top of the conversation. So we're at time, we're a little bit over, but I do want to say thank you again, one, to both Sid and Alyssa for all the content that you presented on today's webinar. And I obviously want to thank our registrants and our attendees for participating. Don't forget to fill out the ESG maturity assessment quiz, and we'd be happy to sit down with you and help you identify some areas for improvement in your data collection process. As I said at the beginning, the webinar is also recorded and will be circulated. You're always welcome to reach out to any of us here at Navisto, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.